is coming in the movie for you guys, and this we're reviewing. This is a movie that I've been looking forward to for a while now, and finally I've gotten the chance to see it, and that is none other than Wonder. And what Wonder is essentially about is we center on this character, Augie, and he is this little boy who has this very deformed face that is so bad that's pretty much kept him from the outside world. And after many years, he has finally been able to convince his mom that he should be able to finally go to a real school. And we basically then spend a year kind of depicting Augie's experience at school. So, Wonder overall, I was very much looking forward to this movie for a couple of reasons. One, the caster I thought was exceptional, but also the concept. I haven't really seen something like this before, where you have someone with a big deformed face. I mean, sure, we've seen movies like this, but not really done in this style. I immediately draw a comparison to Mask, which was a movie back in the 1980s. I've never seen that movie, but I know that definitely is a film that's very similar to this. So, I expected this to be a bit of a tearjerker and definitely be one of those movies that really does get me to cry. And I have to say that yes, Wonder is definitely a heartwarming movie, but it's far more positive than I expect it to be. And honestly, I love the movie that much more from it. I honestly really did enjoy Wonder. I think it is one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. And we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And let me just say right off the bat that that is definitely one of the best things about this film. Pretty much everyone here gives a fantastic performance. I don't think there's really an actor that wasn't on their A game here. I think everyone did a great job. Easily, though, the standout is Jacob Tremblay as Augie Pullman, who once again demonstrates why he is easily one of the best child actors working today. I've loved him since Room, and I loved him even more in this movie because he is a very difficult task to pull off. I mean, Jacob Tremblay, it's no secret to anyone that he doesn't really have this deformity in real life. He is very much full function, and, he's just a normal kid, and the fact that he's able to pull this off is honestly remarkable. There are some scenes where you really don't realize that's Jacob Tremblay. He really does get lost in the role. He really does suck you in. And if he's this good now when he's as young as he is, which I believe he's only like 12 or 13, if he can really pull this off now, I can only imagine how he's going to be in a few years. This kid definitely has a very bright future ahead of him. You're definitely going to see more of him in many things, and I'm very happy to see that since Room, he has been getting more and more work, and I really do hope he continues to, because he is definitely, like I said, one of the best child actors working today for sure, and this movie really does show. Easily, though, the biggest surprise this movie for me is Augie's sister, Izabela Vidovic. I wasn't really expecting much from her. I thought she was giving me like a background character, but halfway through the film, she does start to get a lot more, and I thought she did an incredible job in this movie. Her sister Via is someone who is very much had to live in her brother's shadow, and she hasn't really gotten a lot of attention from her parents, and that whole story could have been very overbearing. It could have been very repetitive, but she honestly does a really great job of making it something fresh and new, and I honestly really did love her performance in this movie. You really did care for her character, and I thought she honestly did a really great job as well. And then the rest of the cast here also is fantastic. Julia Roberts obviously is great as Augie's mother, as well as Owen Wilson as his parents. They both do a really good job. Noah Jupe shows up in this movie. Yes, the kid from Suburbicon, aka one of the only actors I liked in that movie. He does a really great job here as Augie's best friend, Jack Will. I thought he was really good. And also, this other character that shows up later in the film, I thought she also did a really good job. I can't think of the actress's name right now, but she played Via's best friend, Miranda, and she did a really great job here as well. Really, the entire cast here I thought was fantastic. I didn't really think there was a weak link here. Even smaller roles like Mandy Patinkin, Daveed Diggs really do get a lot out of this film, and they all did a really great job. You can tell they're all very passionate about it, and that passion really does ooze off the screen and translates well into their performances, and it's definitely some of the most dedicated stuff I've seen from any actor all year for sure. This is definitely one of my favorite casts in any film as well. So now let's get to the directing and the writing, because let me just say it off the bat, the directing here is great. I love that Stephen Chbosky took this in a much more positive direction. He could have easily made this a very depressing, very, like I said, tearjerker type film, but he doesn't really do that. It honestly doesn't get that melodramatic, and I was quite surprised. I thought this was going to be one of those films that tries to, manipulate your emotions and things like that, and Sure, there are moments that do that, but for the most part, the tone is really positive. There actually is a lot of comedy throughout this film, and I was surprised by how much I was actually laughing in this movie. I honestly had a really great time with Wonder, and I'm going to say right now, it's probably some of the most fun I've had with any movie all year. I had a really fun time with this one. I was honestly surprised with how fun it was, and I will admit there are some really dramatic moments, and those are also done very well. I thought they handled that in a very smart manner. It wasn't, overshadowing anything. It didn't feel manipulative, and I thought they did a really good job with that. The screenplay, though, is what really stuck out to me, because going into this movie, I thought it was only going to be focused on Augie. And while a large duration of the film is paid to Augie and his struggle with Treacher-Collins syndrome, there is also a lot more attention to some of these secondary characters. Like I said, later in the film, we get a lot more insight on Via's character. Then the film, we get some insight on Jack Will's character. Then there's a point where we get insight on Miranda's character. So we get a lot more into these characters' worldviews than I was expecting. I thought we were only going to get Augie's narration, but we get other narrations throughout the film, and I thought they were all really well done. These really got us more into the characters. These really showed us, okay, that's why this character made that choice. That's why this character did this, and I thought they handled that in a very smart manner, and I was very impressed with the way that was done, especially when it comes, like I said, to Via. I thought Via was just going to be the sister that was in the background, and there's a lot more to her than that, and honestly, I cared just as much about those stories than I did about Augie. I was worried those scenes were going to take me out of the film, and that they weren't going to be nearly as interesting, but I cared just as much about what was going on with all those characters, except for, just as much as I did for Augie, and I thought that was just very well portrayed here. The film also, I think, handles the topic of Treacher-Collins syndrome really well. It shows that this is an everyday thing. This is something that Augie has to live with. This is something that he's dealt with for years. Many people have, called him, say that he has the plague, and there are a lot of bullying scenes in this film, and they're handled, again, in a very realistic manner, and that was something I definitely wasn't expecting. I thought they were going to be really cheesy, and I thought they handled them really well. That is, of course, for most of the scenes, because I will admit there are some scenes in the film that are just a tad cheesy, most of them involving Augie's class, but again, this is a film where we have to keep in mind that a large majority of our characters are in 5th grade, so they are going to act like typical 5th graders. So yes, there are fart jokes in this movie, there are scenes where there's like a burping contest, but that's what 5th graders do. I can distinctly remember when I was in 5th grade, I wasn't mature, I was honestly probably kind of an idiot, and I probably acted like the characters did in this movie, so it really wasn't that much of a shock to me how they were acting. I'm like, this is honestly pretty realistic, so I was not really that upset with the way that was done. One of my problems with the film, though, was because of how much attention is paid to some of these characters. The other characters in comparison just don't hold up as much, particularly Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson. You would think because they got these big name actors that they do a lot with them, but honestly, they don't really have a lot to do in this movie. They're kind of pushed to the side. Julia Roberts, Isabel's character, she really is just a writer who's also Augie's mother, and that's kind of it. And then Nate, he's just kind of the supportive father. And don't get me wrong, they are fantastic in the film. They still do some really great stuff throughout this entire film. It's just, honestly, when thinking about it, I didn't really care as much about their characters. More so, I cared about the family, and I cared about it because they were associated with Augie, and there's a great scene with Owen Wilson towards the end of this film that really did make up for the lack of development with his character, but I still didn't feel as attached to the characters individually, and I thought, because of how introspective this film was with the other characters, that I thought they'd pay more attention to characters like Isabel and Nate, but they just don't. There's also a character towards the end of the film I thought we were going to get a narration from, but we didn't, and that I was a little bit disappointed by, but overall, I thought the story definitely was very strong. Also, I will admit that I did find this film really predictable, and when I mean that pretty much everything that happened in this film, I pretty much predicted. There were like a couple things that went down, particularly with, particularly with Miranda's character. There's some stuff going down there that I wasn't expecting. Also, towards the end of the film starts to deviate away from some of the narratives it's created, and I didn't feel like one of them for me didn't feel as conclusive as it could have. But the cinematography in this film, surprisingly, is actually fantastic. I was very impressed with the way cinematography was done. Augie is one of those kids that has a very active imagination, and we frequently get into his imagination. He has a lot of fantasies of Star Wars characters or where he's a spaceman, just to make things more interesting, and I thought they did a really good job with that. It never felt too childish. It actually made a lot of sense for why he did that, and I thought the cinematography was definitely really good. The score was really good too. There's a really good soundtrack this movie, a lot of great songs I definitely really did enjoy. And then the editing. This movie is almost 2 hours long, and it honestly really did fly by for me. I can't really say I was ever bored with Wonder. I was pretty much into every scene that was going on, and that's something that definitely really did impress me. Overall, guys, Wonder is, like I said, one of the biggest surprises of the entire year. I was not expecting to enjoy this movie as much as I did. I thought this was going to be a bit of a tearjerker, and while there were definitely some scenes that got me a bit teary-eyed, I'm not going to lie, I didn't feel the movie was ever too emotionally manipulative. Yes, there are a few scenes here and there that are a bit cheesy. Yes, there are some characters that are a bit underdeveloped, but other than that, guys, I can't really find many other things with this movie that I didn't like. I overall really did love Wonder. I highly encourage you guys to see it. If you have kids, definitely take them to this movie. Do not take them to the Star. Take them to see Wonder. My theater was completely packed with children, to the point where there's a showtime tomorrow that's actually sold out, which I was really surprised about. But this is definitely a film to take your kids to. It's a great family movie overall. I absolutely loved Wonder, and I'm definitely going to give Wonder overall a B+. Also, real quick, guys, keep in mind that I actually have not read the book, so I do not know much about, how this translates, how well this translates to the book. I have a friend who has read the book. It's actually one of his favorite books that he's read, so I personally was not affected by that kind of stuff. I try to go into movies fresh. I don't usually read the book just because I think it usually sours the film overall, so I went into this film completely fresh, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not comparing it to the book like many other reviewers will. So overall, guys, my review of Wonder. Let me know what you guys thought of me overall. Love your thoughts, and I really did enjoy this movie a lot more than I was expecting to. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.